A compact vertical garden with a smart watering system. Let's take a look at the GreenStalk Vertical Planter. This is a sponsored review and the product was sent to me. However, this video review is an honest opinion of what I think of the GreenStalk system. And now let's look at the contents. This is the top water reservoir, and then we have the base. Now I highly recommend that you order the base, and we'll shortly get into the positives of getting the base. These are the watering discs. There's one for each tier, and this is a 5-tier system. These are the wheels for the base, so you can move your GreenStalk planter around. So you get one watering disc per chamber except the top one, which has the water reservoir. This is a very nice user guide, and the company was generous enough to send me some earthworm castings and some seeds as well. And here are some pictures and usage guides. And these are the plant supports. Now the plant supports are optional, and I will show you how to use the plant supports in this video. But if you're planning to grow mostly herbs and non-binding plants, the plant supports are not needed. And finally, these are the containers, the 5 containers that are a part of this 5-tier planter. Now you can even buy a 4-tier, which will give you 4 of these. This particular system has 5 tiers. This is the 5-tier GreenStalk Vertical Planter. So here are all the parts laid out. This is the base. We have the watering discs, the top reservoir, the casters which go on the base, and then we have the instruction manual, and finally all the tiers, all the planters. And these planters are extremely high quality. They're very well built. Now let's begin with the product assembly. Now I highly recommend that you get a base, and there's a huge benefit of getting the base. And it's not about moving your planter around. You definitely can do that if you get the base with the casters. And there's a little drain pipe that's available as well. But the main reason for getting the base is if you're planning to put your GreenStalk planter on a paved surface or any kind of hard surface like tile, concrete, pavers. The base will be a great help because it holds water that drips from the system. Just like that here, you can see the area where all the water stays with the drain pipe. And this is a huge benefit, especially if you're keeping your GreenStalk planter on a paved surface. Now you can also use a stopper to stop the water in the base, but I don't really see any use of doing that. I would rather use the drain pipe. Our next step is to add the potting mix. Now you can actually use any kind of potting mix. Most garden centers will have a bagged potting mix like what you see here. This is a moisture control potting mix, and it also has added fertilizer that will feed your plants for about 3 months. And this is how it looks like. Any kind of potting mix will have either peat moss or coco coir as the first ingredient. And if you're using bagged potting mixes, just fill it up like you see here. Just add the potting mix and then compact it a little bit and fill it all the way to the top. And I personally don't use bagged potting mixes. I assembled this for someone I know, and they wanted to have a maintenance-free system where they add in the potting mix and they don't have to worry about adding fertilizers or amendments for the life cycle of the plant. So you can see how we are compacting the soil. It's very important that you compact the soil lightly, and that way the plants settle down much better in the potting mix. You don't have to do it too much, but just make sure that you have potting soil all the way to the top. Now if you do not compact your soil, the level of the soil will keep going down as you water your plants, and that's not a pretty sight. The recommendation is to fill all the way to the top. So once you fill all the way to the top, you're done with adding the potting mix. And we are using a custom potting mix. So the custom potting mix that we are using for the bottom tier is a mix of 50% compost, 50% soil, and some perlite. And we mix it all in. And the reason why I chose this mix for the bottom tier is to make the planter a little heavy so that it's bottom heavy and it won't move much, even during times of winds, for example. And this is a very well draining potting mix. remember that you need to add either perlite or vermiculite or pumice or any kind of substance that will help the container drain water quickly. And we are now going to set it up on the base. As you can see, it's quite easy to set up the first tier on the base. And this is going to be our heaviest tier. Now you can use any kind of potting mix. You can even use a standard potting mix of peat moss, perlite and vermiculite. For the tiers 2 and 4, we're going to be using these cocoa chips from Vermistera and mix it in with worm castings. Now this is again a very good product to use for potting mixes because you don't need to add perlite. Cocoa chips are naturally aerating. They hold a lot of moisture, and the worm castings that are mixed in will provide adequate nutrients to your plants as they grow. So if you're using cocoa chips, you don't really need to add a lot of amendments. This is good to go. Just one cocoa brick will give you enough soil for one planter. And then you just put it in and just compact it a little bit. Now I've found roots to grow better in cocoa chips, like this kind of a mix. It provides a lot of air, a lot of room for the roots to grow. So this is a good choice. You can buy this from vermistera.com and use coupon code CAG to get 10% off your order. And we are done with our container mix for tiers 2 and 4. And for tiers 1 and 3, we are going to be using a mix of peat moss, perlite and compost. And this is a standard potting mix that most of us should be using. It's a great potting mix that will help you grow really good plants in your GreenStalk planter. Now let's get into planting. So for planting your plants, you can either do it before you start tiering up your vertical planter, or like I am doing here, you just plant one tier at a time and then just keep adding up the tiers. And I just found this to be easier than planting individual plants. So all you do is take your plants and then plant them at each slot. Now there are 6 slots in each planter. You want to plant one plant in each. That way the plant is growing out. Now I plant my seedlings at around a 45-degree angle. As you can see, they're not like upright, they're not straight at 90 degrees. And I just think this is a better idea than planting them straight up, because the little angle lets you set up the tiers in a much easier way than if the plants were planted at 90 degrees. But you can't go much wrong in this either ways. As long as you plant your seedlings or your plants correctly in these pockets, you should be good to go. So we planted a lot of different plants in this tier. You can see pepper, cilantro. Now at this time you can mix in an organic fertilizer into the soil. However, in our case we are not adding any fertilizer to this potting mix, but rather we will be using a liquid fertilizer later on to provide nutrition to the plants. Now you can go with a slow release fertilizer. You can use an organic fertilizer or a salt-based fertilizer that's slow release. It just depends on how much maintenance you want to do for your plants. But I will show you both the methods. At this time you can mix in a granular fertilizer, which will feed your plants for about 3 months or so. Or you can follow the liquid fertilizer method that I will shortly demonstrate. Our next step is to attach the watering disc, and this is very important. This is the watering disc that will actually water each tier. And this is a very clever design, extremely nice design, where you just water from the top and then the water goes through all these tiers and then comes into this watering disc where it waters each tier individually. And this is a big relief because you don't need to worry about overwatering or underwatering. And you just keep the next tier on top of the first tier, and you can see how nicely it locks into place. And now let's look at all the wonderful plants we planted in the rest of the tiers. Now remember that this GreenStalk planter can be moved around, and that's another benefit of ordering the casters or the base, is that you can rotate this planter so that your shade loving plants are towards shade, and then the plants that need more sun can be exposed to sunlight. And if you're not getting a lot of sunlight, this is even more critical, because plants like tomatoes and peppers and corn need sunlight, and by using the casters you can move the slots around, and that way you provide enough sunlight to all your plants. Now you can plant almost any type of vegetable, herb, flowers, anything that you want in this planter. Each of these tiers has a lot of space. There's a lot of potting mix in each tier. So you can pretty much plant almost anything in these planters and they'll grow well. And I've planted everything from small plants like cilantro to huge plants like tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, and plants like strawberries, which grow excellent in these kind of vertical containers, and you can harvest the fruits without them getting dirty or being attacked by insects. And then you finally attach the top water reservoir, and the top water reservoir will hold the water and then water each individual disc. Now on the top tier I planted tomatoes, and the reason for planting that on the top tier is I wanted the tomatoes to grow from top to the bottom. They not only look pretty, they also grow quite well. This is how our GreenStalk planter looks like once it's fully assembled. As you can see, it hardly takes up any space, and it lets you grow a lot of plants in a very compact and small space. And for watering, you just take a water hose and then fill in the top water reservoir completely. And you need to stop after you water for some time, and I didn't realize this. And when the first time I tried watering, the water gushed out from the bottom tier and I had a lot of water in the bottom. And that's because I didn't realize that I was over-watering the GreenStalk planter. I reached out to Ashley in customer service and I received a prompt reply on how to address my issue. So 5 stars for the customer support. I think the customer support is excellent. And this is what you get when you buy a product from a reputable company. You get not only a great quality product, but also excellent customer service. And the fix to my problem was simple. I just was overwatering it. I had to stop watering after some time. And a good way to gauge that is to just watch the drain pipe, and as soon as the drain pipe starts dripping, you need to stop watering. Now let's look at how to add fertilizer to your plants. Since we didn't add any fertilizer during planting, we are using this organic liquid fertilizer. And this is a very unique product where you just pump in a few times into this watering can. Once you're ready with your liquid fertilizer solution, just add it to the reservoir on top, and the solution will then be delivered to all the tiers equally. And there are markers here to show you how much water you need to add for 3, 4, and 5 tier planters. Now GreenStalk recommends only adding water through the watering tiers. However, if you use a fertilizer that doesn't contain salt, like the one that we have used here, it should be fine in my opinion. However, if you're doubtful about it, just use water in the top tier and then add granular fertilizer to your plants as they grow, or mix it into the topsoil so that it keeps feeding the plants. And here you can see the drip in action. Each watering disc will provide a water source to the tier by dripping into that tier, just like you see here. And again, there's a very clever design, a great engineering example of how you can solve the problem of watering each tier. So very well done on this front, GreenStalk. And let's look at the plant supports now. So the plant supports are optional. We did get a set of plant supports, so I can show you how we use the plant supports and how they can be assembled and used. And these are the instructions. So you can see the attachment here. One part goes to the planter and then the other side goes to the actual ring or the supports that go around the plant. Now once again, look at the design. It's a pretty clever design. All you do is push this into the notch and then bend it over, and it secures and locks in place. And the design is so unique that you can't really go wrong in assembling this. There's only one way you can assemble this. Look at the notch, just slide the other piece in and then bend it down and then push it into place. That's it. And what is also unique is that once you assemble all these pieces, they sit quite well onto your planter. Now remember that you cannot install the supports without removing the planters. So you will be assembling the plant supports first, just like you see here on the sides of the GreenStalk planter. These pieces lock into place and they won't come out. So it's a good design here as well with the plant supports. So you add in one for each of these notches between each container in the tier. And I found this kind of assembly to be easier. Once this is done, you then assemble the ring that you formed in the previous step. And here is the ring. You just take the ring and find the round slots or round notches that you see here to push them into place. And I found this kind of assembly to be a lot easier. And now you just replace the top tier back to where it was. And here you can see how the plants are using the plant supports. Now our tomato plant had grown far too big. We should have actually installed these supports a little earlier. So it's best to install these supports once you've assembled your GreenStalk planter. You can do it later as well. I think it's a lot more helpful if you just add the plant supports while you plant your seedlings. And here you can see the fully assembled GreenStalk planter with the plant supports. Even with the plant supports, it doesn't take up a huge amount of space. So my overall conclusion after reviewing the GreenStalk Vertical Planter for several weeks is that it is a very well built product and lets you grow lots of plants in a small space. So there we have it folks, that was our episode on the GreenStalk Planter review. If you like this planter, please buy this planter from our affiliate link which I'll post in the video description and the comment below. You can use coupon code CAG to get $10 off your order as well. And if you have any questions, comments or suggestions, do let us know in the comments box below. We'll see you again soon. Happy gardening!